There are many benefits to the hot seat strategy. I think the biggest one, though, is the venue that it provides for students to teach students.
Articulating something out loud is, especially for me and for many auditory learners, so important in understanding concepts and synthesizing with other things we've discussed.
I know that personally, I learn best when there's a discussion, and even better when I'm forced to explain an idea, an opinion, a concept to a fellow peer in a way that would make it palpable for me.
Because not only do you have to understand it, you have to understand what it is you're trying to glean from it and be able to guide your other fellow students, and then you really end up understanding.
So it forces me not only to look at the information and to analyze it, to make sure I synthesize it and not just summarize it.
Well, I think it really helps you to see kind of like the big picture. I remember one specific document last year. It was a first-hand account from a conquistador of Hernando Cortez's, conqueror of the Aztecs. I think that really helped us. We got to look at everything. We looked at kind of the difference between the two societies at first. What were the differences in just their values.
Really, it's a matter of skill building that you get from the hot seat that then translates not only to primary sources but also to secondary sources. Because of the inner-outer hot seat strategy, you had to really force yourself to understand something about the primary source, and you might not have gotten it all, and that was fine, because you could rely on your other students, on your fellow peers, to bring something additional to the table.
And you end up analyzing not just the facts, but the way it's presented and the point of view.
You may say something, and then your classmates may find the flaws in your point of view and your argument. So you really have to be careful. You have to learn to kind of look at the flaws in your argument, and then you kind of develop your own kind of sort of perspective on things.
So once students gain the confidence to bring up a unique idea or something that is outside of the text, then it allows for other students, it provokes other students to comment on it, to think about what the student said, and to just sort of build an incredible discussion that can ultimately amount in a unique thesis, in something that is new and exciting for the student.
So you really need to cite specifics in order to support your argument, because that's what a well-supported argument is going to have. It's going to have specifics from your outside knowledge.
Well, I was lucky enough to come up with a question in a hot seat that ended up being similar to a question used on an essay, and then I really had a full understanding of how to answer the question because I myself had come up with the question. And that tends to happen the more you do hot seats and analyze and come up with questions and come up with answers, the more familiar questions look on tests.
But I'm looking for themes, I'm looking for concepts that I can bring up in class, that I can teach to my peers, and then hopefully be taught by my peers.
Then on an essay you can go in and make a very solid argument because you've already thought about it. And you've already, gained the ability to see the flaws in a potential argument.
The question leader part of it, where a student creates their own questions, adds another level of analysis to the essay.
It encourages students to really develop their own historical perspective, their own historical voice, because they can, because they are not limited to a yes or no question. They're not limited to 5 selected choice responses.
It's a bit early in the midnight hour for me.
I took an AP Literature course this year, and every time, and the class was sort of set up in one big hot seat, basically. All of us would sit and read our books together out loud with the teacher, and we'd just stop whenever we saw something that was perhaps significant in some way. And a lot of what was significant we had to support textually, historically, using the same techniques that we learned, the same habits of mind that we learned in our history classes.
I really think in AP World I was developing kind of my ability to analyze and my ability to synthesize information. And I really kind of built up, and by the end of the year I really felt I was able to analyze documents well, I was able to kind of see the big picture, hit all the themes and understand them.
In other history classes, I went from AP World to AP US, and the same techniques that I learned and employed in the AP World class, even though it was on a macro scale, I used it on a micro scale in AP US.
But when you hear students articulating their points of view in class, you really earn respect for your classmates and for the course, because you can see how it can be discussed in real life as opposed to just informal testing situations.
What's also great about the hot seat is that the discussion isn't limited to the classroom, that once you set the precedent as a teacher for the class to really get involved in the text and bring it to life in a way through dialogue, that discussion then lingers outside of the classroom.
Well, I think, everyone in the class has a different point of view, and everyone in the class has a different background, and they bring something different to the hot seat.
And I think that the best way to excite students is to get other students excited. And that way is to engage them in a direct conversation, because it means that they're no longer learning, but they're teaching as well.
We're gonna make a better day.